the last thing I want to go over with confidence intervals is how to do the calculator function to find our interval for the proportion and for the average. Okay, so for the calculator function, just going over what the function actually is first. For the interval about a proportion, you're going to be looking at 1 prop z interval. And what I have on the screen there, 1 prop z int, that's the abbreviation you'll find in the menu. For the mean interval about a mean, we have the t interval. Okay? Now, I'll pull up the calculator so you can see where the menu is that you're going to find these two functions. Just as before, you're going to have to read the problem very carefully. It will say use the calculator function on my assessments, tests, and quizzes. And make sure you know if it's a mean or a proportion. It's not going to say it in the problem. You're going to need to look at the pieces of information they give you, and base off of what they give you, you're going to have to determine, is it talking about a proportion or is it talking about a mean? Now we're going to do the same 3 examples we did in the previous videos. So the first one being when 538 students at E-Town High School were asked if they have ever been to Lancaster City or Harrisburg, 329 said no. Construct a confidence interval that is 99.7% confident about how many E-Town kids have never been to Lancaster City or Harrisburg. Okay, so there's the problem. What you're going to need to identify first, is it proportion or is it average? It says confidence interval in the problem, so we know we're making a confidence interval. And I know this is a proportion because it's giving me a total for my sample and how many people or how many items out of that total are we considering a success. In this case, 329 said no, they have never been to Lancaster City or Harrisburg, so there's our X value. The other thing we need to be able to pick out is our confidence level, which is 99.7. So now I'm going to go to the calculator, okay, and the function you're going to go to is the stat button. If you hit stat and go over to the test menu, this is going to be one of the main menus for the rest of the course. This is going to be used in chapters 8 and 9 a great amount. Now, we said this was a proportion problem, so we need to go to 1 prop z interval. Now, you have to be careful because some of these names look very familiar. We have 1 prop z test. That's not what we're looking for. You need to scroll all the way down to, I'm going to have to go up one more, 1 prop z interval. So on my calculator, it's the A function, and I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to ask me for 3 things: my X value, my N value, and C level stands for confidence level. So my X was 329. 329 students said no, they've never been to Lancaster City or Harrisburg. The 538 is my total. Little n again is the universal variable for the sample size. And for the confidence level, it must be in decimal form. So I have 0.997. Okay, so make sure you put it in as 0.997. I believe it'll give you an error if you put it in as 99.7. And just go down to calculate. And this is nice because it gives you a little bit of information. It still has your sample size. It has your p-hat, so it's telling you that's your midpoint. 0.6115 is your midpoint, and that could be useful if you need to find the margin of error or just helping you know where the middle of our interval is. And 0.54916 to 0.67389. That is our interval, so I would put that into my confidence statement. I'm 99.7% confident that the true proportion of E-Town High School students who have not been to Lancaster City or Harrisburg is between 54.916% and 67.389%. Okay, so there is the example for a proportion. Now our next example, below is the average cost for t-shirts in the top clothing stores. Make a confidence interval that is 99.7% confident. So this is the same confidence level, 99.7. This time it's giving us a list of values. It is quantitative data. Okay, so that's another thing you can use to pick out if it's a proportion or an average. Okay, if it's categorical data, qualitative data, which is have you ever been to Lancaster City or Harrisburg? Yes or no. That's proportional. Okay, this is numerical data. It's a list of numbers. So we know this is an average. Okay, so again, here's 99.7%. It's giving us our data. Now in this case, since it's giving us our data set, I'm going to enter that into the calculator. So if you need a quick review of how to enter list into your calculator, I'm clearing out the old information. I'm hitting stat, edit, and here's all my list. Now I'm going to clear out that L1 just so you remember how to do it. Go up to L1, hit clear and enter, and now the list disappears. And now just bear with me for 1 minute as I enter these values into my list, doing it nice and carefully, making sure every number is typed in correctly, because if one number is typed in incorrectly, then the whole list is going to be for naught. Your data will not be correct. Okay, now remember, whenever you're in the screen, don't hit clear or delete. You might get rid of one of your data points. Always hit second quit. And now I'm going to go to stat and back over to test. Now we need to go to the Z interval. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The T interval. So again, we have a T test up here at number 2. That's not what we need. We need to go down to number 8, T interval, and hit enter. Now, you have 2 choices for your input. You either have data or stats. For this problem, we were given a list of data points, so we're going to have data highlighted, and you need to tell it what list you plugged it into. So I had mine in L1. If you see here down L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6, we have been working with those before. They're the ways that you're going to tell it what list you plugged it into. So I have L1. Frequency, you can leave it at 1. And 0.997 is our confidence level. So all that's going to stay the same. Go down to calculate and hit enter. Now this gives us our average, it gives us our standard deviation, and it gives us our sample size. So again, it's giving us some of the summary statistics. The mean X bar is our midpoint, and we have 99.7% confident that the true average of T-shirts at the top clothing stores is going to be between $6.76 and $19.89. So again, just rounded 2 decimal points since we talked about money. Okay, so we had an average. We had an example for a proportion. We had an example for average, and the last one now I want to do an example where it gives you the summary stats. So if we look at our last example. 7 fossils were found of a miniature horse species. The summary data for the sample of 7 fossils is as follows. The average is 46.143. Standard deviation of 1.190 centimeters. A normal horse's height is normally distributed, so we can assume these heights are as well. Use this information to construct a 99% confidence interval. Okay, this time it's not giving us the data set, it's giving us these summary stats. So if I were asked to make a confidence interval for this, again, it's numerical data, so I'm going to go back to my T interval. So stats, tests, go down to 8 for the T interval. This time I'm going to highlight stats, and I'm going to plug in my information. Okay, so I'm just going to type right over this. You don't need to delete anything. It said our average was 46.143. Standard deviation was 1.19. Our sample size was 7 fossils, it said. Now this time our confidence level is 0.99. And go down to calculate. Now we already have all the summary stats, so when we calculate this, all that information is exactly what I just plugged in, and it's telling us that we are 99% confident that the true average height for a miniature horse is between 44.475 centimeters and 47.811 centimeters. Okay, so that's good examples of and the functions of how to find a confidence interval on your graphing calculator.